Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and today I'm down in my messy shop, and I want to talk to you about reloading black powder cartridges. I've been getting a lot of questions about loading black powder cartridges lately, I guess because I've put so much stuff out on 38 long and short Colt, so people are getting interested in reloading again. And the questions I'm getting are things that honestly I hadn't thought about for a long time, because I've been loading black powder cartridges for 35, 40 years. So I thought I would tell you some of the basics you have to know to load black powder cartridges. And I think in the next video I'll load up a batch of 45 Colt black powder cartridges so you can see the whole process. But what I want to talk to you about today are a couple of the basics, and one of them is a question I get all the time. How much powder should I use for, XYZ cartridge? And that's an excellent question. And the answer is it depends. I'm going to show you a way that you can figure that out. And this is how I figured it out when I first started shooting black powder cartridges. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about, and I'll probably start off with talking about that, is black powder lube and bullets for black powder cartridge shooting. And this is a real important subject. And when I first started shooting black powder cartridges back in the 90s, there was not a whole lot of information about it. In fact, a lot of us were learning as we went. And I went through kind of the progression that a lot of people went through. I discovered the importance of lube, and it is very important with a black powder cartridge. And I don't want to make black powder seem arcane. You'll see some black powder cartridge shooters talking about the holy black, as if you have to be an acolyte to a new religion to learn how to shoot black powder cartridges, and certainly you don't. I mean, a lot of it's the same as any reloading, but not all of it. The fact is, black powder has some different properties, and those different properties require you to do some things that you would not do for smokeless powder reloading, or that you would do quite differently. And if you don't do them, you're going to have bad cartridges. Right? So I started off, I tried shooting black powder with regular cartridges for smokeless ammunition. And I learned very quickly that that is not a good way to go. In fact, I did one test when I was first starting with black powder cartridges. And I discovered that after 10 rounds of shooting a smokeless lubed bullet loaded in a black powder cartridge, accuracy went from like 2 inches at 15 yards to 10 to 15 inches at 15 yards, and just went down from there. And after shooting 50 of those things, it took me 2 hours to clean the barrel of my revolver, because the fouling got so baked on. I mean, it was just hard to describe. Imagine baked on goo in an oven that hasn't been cleaned for 20 years, right? Well, that's the way this was. It was just baked on hard and would not dissolve. Required bronze brushing after bronze brushing after bronze brushing. It was awful. So I learned how important that is. And at the time, there were not many suitable bullets. And in fact, at the time, there really were not any. There were some 19th century bullet designs still around, from Lyman particularly, and RCBS had a halfway decent one, but they really didn't hold all the lube that you needed. So a lot of us went to something called a grease cookie. And a grease cookie is pretty simple. It's a bottom layer of either cardboard or beeswax. I used to use pure beeswax as a bottom layer, as a sealer. Then there'd be about 1/8 of an inch wafer of black powder lube that we would punch out. And then on top of that, there'd be a cardboard wad, very thin. I used to use milk cartons, wax milk cartons, very good. And then the bullet went on top of that. But in order for that to work, the powder charge either had to be exact, or you had to compress the powder to the right level using a compression die. because if you use the bullet to compress it, you would extrude all of that lube in the cookie into the powder. And when you shot it, it'd go nothing, right? So we learned that stuff. Then we went to Wonder Wads, which did the same thing, just a little bit easier. And then a cowboy action shooter whose nickname was Pigeon Roost Slim, I don't know his real name, he designed a bullet mold called the PRS, Pigeon Roost Slim 45 caliber bullet mold. And it was the first of the Big Lube bullets. And I'm going to show you Big Lube bullets in just a few minutes. But that bullet held enough lube to shoot all day, every day, without having to stop and clean your gun after every 5 shots, which we pretty much had to do before punch the bore. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble, even if you're using Wonder Wads. After 10 shots, you'd want to punch the bore, make sure nothing was building up in there. With a PRS bullet, I can shoot black powder all day. Never even think about it. It's perfect. Rifle or handgun. Great. Right, so that was followed by some other guys who had the same idea. So there was a Mav Dutchman designed a 44 and Snakebite designed a 38. Now there's a whole family of them. And those are the bullets you really want to use to load black powder. And I'm going to show you that stuff in just a minute. So those are the two things that I kind of want to cover. I want to cover bullets, lube, and then how that determines how much powder you're going to use in the case. So let's get over to the table and let me show you what I'm talking about. And I've got to tell you, the how much powder do I use is highly dependent on the bullet that you're using. Right, so we're going to be talking about 45 Colt here, but I'll show you some other stuff as well. But right here is a typical 45 Colt semi-wide cutter 0.454 inch diameter bullet that you would use to load Colt revolvers, right? Now, this is a modern design, and it has modern hard lube in it. And this bullet is going to be a very bad choice for loading with black powder, because black powder really needs lube. I mean, really, really, really. And black powder lube is different from smokeless lube. Here's a chunk of the bullet lube that I use. And it is 60% lamb's tallow, or actually 66%, 2/3 lamb's tallow, and 1/3 beeswax by weight. Okay, so it's very fatty and very greasy. It'll kind of melt in your fingers a little bit, as opposed to the hard red stick or blue stick or green stick lubes that you use on modern bullets. Now, lube's important for all bullets, and on a modern bullet it provides almost a microscopic film between the barrel and the bullet that keeps the bullet from leading, and it reduces some of the friction and drag going down through the barrel. And black powder lube does the same thing, but it does one other thing as well. It keeps black powder fouling soft. And if you don't use black powder lube, each successive shot is going to bake that black powder fouling into your rifling. And I can tell you from experience, because I've run tests on this, if you put 10 shots through a black powder revolver, load it with black powder and use smokeless powder lube bullets, by the end of 10 shots, you'll be shooting a 10-inch group at 15 yards, or at 7 yards even. And it just gets worse from there. And shoot 50 of those rounds, and it'll take you 2 hours to clean the bore out, because you will have baked on crud like you would not believe. Okay? So you don't want to do that. Now, you want to use a bullet that provides sufficient lube to keep that fouling soft, and use the right kind of lube. Now, like I said, my lube is lamb's tallow and beeswax. But you can make a very effective lube with 50-50 olive oil and beeswax, and there are plenty of other formulas, but the olive oil one I think is the simplest one. So get a pound of beeswax and go 50-50 beeswax and olive oil, and you'll have an outstanding black powder lube. And if you've got enough lube on the bullet, you can shoot all day, every day, and just clean up with a few patches at the end of the day. Your fouling will stay nice and soft in the barrel, and each shot will blow the fouling out in front of it instead of baking it on. So the kind of bullets I use to do that are these. This is a Big Lube bullet. This is a PRS, Pigeon Roost Slim. And let me get one of those that's not lubed up. Okay, so over on the right side of your screen, you can see that smokeless bullet that we were just talking about. So the far right has the lube band on it. And then just to the left of that, you can see where I've stripped off the modern lube. And you can see how very shallow that lube groove is. It holds very little lube. All right, so now we move over to the left side of the screen. And all the way to the left, you can see a stripped down Big Lube PRS bullet. And you can see how massive that lube groove is. I mean, that just holds a ton of lube, and that's what you need for black powder. So right next to it, just to the right of it, you'll see one where that lube groove is filled with my black powder lube, which is the lamb's tallow and beeswax mixture. All right, so that's what you want to have if you want to shoot all day, and you don't want to be constantly cleaning your bore between shots to keep it from, turning into an overbaked oven. So we've been talking about 45 caliber bullets, the Pigeon Roost Slim, which is all the way over on the left. These are the three that I use all the time. I showed them to you before. There's the PRS 45. The one in the center is a Mav Dutchman, and I use that for 44s. And then the one with the truncated cone there is the Snakebite, and that's a 357, used for 38s, 357s. So you can get the molds for these from Dick Dastardly at Big Lube, biglubebullets.com. I'm going to put the information down below. Dick has a number of different molds, not just these three now. This is what started it off. Those are the ones that I use, but he's got a whole variety of them. You can get just about anything you need for black powder. And he's got some other neat stuff as well, so I do recommend you drop by his place. Soft. Now, I lubricate these by running them through a lubricizer with my lube in it, so I do it, I don't rub it on, but there's a number of ways that you can lube them. But basically, you want to have enough lube. Now, if you want to load black powder bullets, but let's say that you don't have time, or you don't have the money, or you don't have the inclination to get a hold of these Big Lube bullets. Well, the next best thing is to take Wonder Wads, lubricated felt wads. You can make them yourself. This is my own, with Dynafelt soaked in my lube, but you can buy Wonder Wads already soaked in lube, and what you have to do is load them under your bullet. Okay, and that wad will squeeze out enough lube to keep things going. It's not quite as good, but it's pretty good. The other techniques involve making grease cookies, and they are very involved, and you need a compression die to really do it right, so I'm not going to run you through those here. That's advanced stuff. But your best bet is to get a hold of some of these Big Lube bullets and load those. Okay, so assuming that you're using a Big Lube bullet, how do you know how much powder to put in the case? And the answer to that is basically you've got to fill the case up to the base of the bullet. So if you know the size of your bullet, we got a 45 Colt case right here. Right, so if you know the size of your bullet, what I do is I set it on a flat surface and I draw a line on a dowel the height of the crimp groove. All right, so that tells me that up to here is how deep my bullet's got to go to hit the powder. So I want to fill the case up so that when I put it in, it's touching the powder right there. All right, that's pretty simple. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go find that load on this. All right, so I did a little bit of trial and error, and I've got powder in the case, and you can see it comes up to the line. So let's see how much that is. Throw it on my scale. And that is 27.2. Now I've done this about 5 or 6 times, and it's running between 27.2, 27.3, and 27.8. So we'll just call it 28 grains. All right, so 28 grains becomes the minimum amount of powder that you want to put in here, because that will put the base of your bullet just touching the powder when the case is filled. Okay, now if you are using a Wonder Wad, you're going to do the same thing, but you're going to do it with the wad under the bullet. Let me move this here so you can see it. Right, you're going to draw that line with the wad under the bullet, and then you're going to find out how much powder that holds. So let's take a look at that. Okay, we're back experimenting here, and I've filled it up to my line for the Wonder Wad. And let's see how much powder that is. So that's 22.4. So we'll call it 25 grains of powder. So 25 versus 28. So you're losing a fair amount by putting the wad in, but that's what you need to do if you're going to use a normal, conventionally lubed bullet, a smokeless powder lube bullet. Okay, so now we know what our minimum powder is. Now, if you're using a Wonder Wad, you're going to load 25 grains, because if you compress it with the bullet and the wad between the powder, you're going to actually squeeze lube out of the wad into the powder, and it's going to affect your powder burn, and it could affect it quite a bit. So you don't want any compression at all with that. So you're going to load 25 grains, you're going to load that right on top of it, you're going to be done. Okay, but say you've got the big lube bullet, right, that could handle 28 grains. Okay, so it depends on the powder. Like if I was loading Swiss, I would only load 28 grains, because Swiss doesn't really like compression. Now if I was loading Go-X, I would actually load probably 33 or 34 grains. So that would be 2.3 for a scoop. So that's about 33 grains. So let's put that in here, and I'll just show you how much compression you're going to get. Okay, so if you can see that, I'm getting a bit over 1/8 of an inch of compression on that, and Go-X can handle that pretty well. Okay, so I would be happy to load that. Now I could go a little bit less. I'm going to use this 1.9 grain scoop. And that'll give me 30 grains, roughly, of powder. So let me load that in. And that's going to give me about 1/10 of an inch of compression. Okay, now I'm using Schützen powder. Well, not Schützen. It's Vano. This was imported by Graf's. Same thing as the Schützen. And that likes compression, but I'm not sure if it likes it as much as Go-X does. So I'm going to load the 30 grain charge instead of roughly a 35 grain charge. Okay, so that's kind of how you do it, right? 28 grains, no compression, right to the base of the cartridge. 35 grains, significant compression, over 1/8 of an inch. And 30 grains, about 1/10 of an inch, and that's pretty good for Go-X or for Schützen or any of that stuff. So in this case, 30 grains makes a pretty good load for the 45 Colt all around. So that's how you determine how much powder goes in there, and that's, like I said, that's highly dependent on the bullet size, and lube is the key to everything. And once you know those things, then you're good to load virtually any caliber. Okay, well, I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope I didn't obfuscate the issues too much for you, and give you the information that you need to know to get started on black powder cartridge reloading. Because shooting black powder cartridges is way more fun in my book through the old guns than shooting smokeless powder. There's just something about it that takes you back in history, and I love shooting them. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and you know what that does for us. And if you're not a subscriber already, I hope you'll think about subscribing. My website, MikeBeliveau.com, has not yet been updated by my smart computer guy, but I'm hoping within the next month it'll be good to go for a new soft relaunch with even more content there. So I'll keep you informed of that. Next week we'll be loading 45 Colt black powder cartridges, so stay tuned for that. And until next week, bye.